G'day all, welcome back to the G-Man Show. Today we're talking about potential rate cuts in July. They are looking very likely. Let's have a quick watch and commentary of this news piece. Apparently the war on inflation's over, guys. Let's see.
Welcome to Close of Business. I'm Alicia Barry. The inflation genie is officially back in the bottle.
Oh, yeah?
The Reserve Bank's preferred measure of inflation has fallen to 2.4% in May, the lowest reading since November 2021.
Well, that's what they tell you. Now, once again, tinfoil hatter cooking on the glass Barbie. Things to me are not going up annually now, prorated at 2.4%. Absolutely not. To say it's the genie's back in the bottle, this is some creative data crunching to get that number. Every time you go down to the shops, your Woolworths, Coles, even Aldi, things are up. Might be 10 cents, 20 cents, even $1, depending on what it is. Just about every month after month after month. I look at the prices all the time. I keep a mental log. I'm that kind of guy. I'm walking around on the autism spectrum, probably undiagnosed, just looking at stuff and remembering it and just shaking my head at all the prices.
That gives a green light on rate relief for borrowers, with the markets betting there's more than a 90% chance of another cut in July. Here's Emily Stewart.
Good on you, Stewie.
With around 140 trucks, fuel is one of transport company Cold Express's biggest costs.
We'd go through hundreds of thousands of litres, on a weekly basis.
War in the Middle East has contributed to volatile oil prices.
Just as intended. Have you guys noticed? Once again, tinfoil hat. But have you guys noticed there's always some sort of crisis? You start feeling like there might be some green shoots coming out. Some green shoots coming out into life. The last 5 or 6 years, it's been one thing after the other. Crisis after crisis after crisis. Affecting supply chains, affecting fuel prices and utilities. Oh, it's always somebody else's fault. Someone dropped a bomb in Afghanistan. And that means your electricity's going up.
When the fuel goes up, the price of goods in stores goes up because the fuel levy has to be added to the cost of getting the products to the store.
Good old fuel levy. The good old fuel levy, the old government helping out the battlers in small business. Yeah, sure they are. Tax after tax, guys. Tax you into the ground, and there's more to come. We have a broke government. I'm just ranting freestyle here today. This has set me right off.
The fragile ceasefire between Israel and Iran has seen prices plunge.
Oil prices have come down very, very quickly, and so I guess what that's telling you is that any sort of risk premium that was priced into that market has now basically evaporated very, very quickly. It's telling you that the market's not that worried about any shocks to the supply side.
Back home, it's still tough at the Bowser.
Everything's going up, and it's just an unbelievable world we're living in at the moment.
So we live in Maningrida, which is about 6 hours away by car, and the petrol prices there are nearly $3 a litre, which is huge.
The price of fuel actually...
$3 a litre? You've got to be joking. That's got to be a remote community. $3 a litre. I think, what is it, sitting at high ones at the moment? Maybe creeping back into the low twos. $2. Went down. We had a bit of a plunge down to about $1.50. I was seeing it. But now, yeah, short-lived.
Actually fell 2.9% last month and 10% for the year, helping to put downward pressure on inflation, which came in lower than expected at 2.1% in the 12 months to May. Food, non-alcoholic drinks, rent hikes and construction cost pressures eased. But gas prices did accelerate, while electricity prices went backwards. The Reserve Bank's preferred measure of underlying inflation fell to 2.4%, well within its target range.
Now, there'll be a few of you out there who won't like me saying this. They need to drop rates quick. Otherwise, we're going to overshoot that. I mean, how much damage can be done to the economy? Yes, there are always people out there who want the whole thing to crash. They want anarchy. But everyone's suffering. Small businesses are suffering. People are losing jobs. I don't care what the BS unemployment statistic is. People are getting laid off left, right and centre. I've seen it firsthand. Work drying up, businesses slashing costs, which means people. Why? Because interest is so high. The cost of doing business is so high. They need to really get things going again by dropping these rates.
This is the lowest that inflation has been for years. Well, I'm reluctant to say it's mission accomplished, but we are certainly making more progress than was expected.
Good on you, Jimmy.
A price war on home brand products in supermarkets is underway, according to JP Morgan. And Choice found a basket of 14 items was slightly cheaper at Aldi than Woolworths and Coles, but a lot more expensive at IGA.
I don't know why you'd go to IGA unless you really want to support an independent retailer who's operating a franchise. Every time I've been to IGA and looked at prices, through the absolute roof. And I understand they probably don't have the buying power of these other chains behind them. I just understand why you would prefer to go to IGA instead.
I do find Aldi are a lot cheaper, but sometimes they just don't have the same things that Coles and Woolworths do have, so yeah.
Some relief could be on the way for households, with financial markets pricing in more than a 90% chance of an interest rate cut when the Reserve Bank meets next month.
And that's next week now. This is a couple of days old, this video. Next week, my view is they will cut. I'd be disappointed if they didn't. There'll be a lot of people that they're hoping they do cut, having mortgages and etc. This is my punt. I think there'll be another 2 more this year. So it'll be 3 more in total. Another 2 after next week, depending on how bad the economy gets. I don't care what anybody says. What do these people say sitting up in their ivory towers that we're all good and we're not in a recession and all that? I know a lot of people are doing it real tough. Real tough at the minute. But I guess recessions don't affect everybody. Some people are very much insulated from them depending on what your work is. But I firmly believe that we are in a recession.
The softer than expected inflation figures are bolstering expectations of more rate cuts this year.
That probably means that they will cut in July, follow up with another one in August, and most likely deliver a third cut this year.
Yeah, see, I should work there. Give me the job. Give me the job. Get me on TV. I'll say that exact same thing.
In November.
In time for when many households might need it most.
The inflation data forced Westpac to shift its call for the next RBA cut to July from its earlier view of August. Westpac's chief economist Lucy Ellis joined me. Lucy Ellis, welcome to Close of Business.
Thanks, Alicia. Great to be here.
What was it about the inflation data in May that had you switching your call to a likely cut in July?
It was about some of the detail in the inflation release. There were some categories that were lower than we expected, and they were the ones that have a certain amount of persistence to them. Things like housing-related inflation and services-related inflation that gave us more confidence that inflation was going to start coming in inside what the RBA was expecting, rather than having quite such a large increase in June as we had previously been expecting. So we had thought that the June quarter might be a bit of a big one, and that might have caused the RBA to sort of wait a bit before moving forward. But it's now become apparent, with 2 months of the quarter now in, that the downward momentum that we have been seeing in inflation, particularly on the housing and services side, is actually happening happening soon enough for that to affect the RBA's decisions earlier than previously expected.
So is there much risk then the RBA will wait until after that quarterly reading out on July 30 to cut?
Yeah, property back on the menu, guys. Everyone said I was bonkers. I got all these comments, people telling me, "Oh, go and become the new CEO of Ray White." Well, guess what? What's going to happen when these rates come down? Property back on the menu, guys. Guys and girls, property. Everyone's going to be running in. I've got a friend who's a mortgage broker. He tells me his phone is at the moment ringing off the hook. People trying to work out how to get in and beat the stampede that they are anticipating is coming. Oh no, G-Man, you're a shill. You're a shill for property investment. No, we're talking economics here.
I can't rule that out. They had said previously that they wanted to be cautious and predictable. I don't think moving again in July was what they thought they would be doing when they cut rates in May, but the facts have just moved a bit ahead of what they thought they would.
So where do you think interest rates will end up, and when will the next cuts come after the July move, if that so materialises?
Well, we're keeping the timing of the next 3 rate cuts after this one under review. A couple of weeks ago, I did put in 2 more rate cuts into my forecast. So the one that we're looking towards now, 1 more this year after that, and 2 next year. Now, it is possible, if inflation continues to surprise on the downside, that all of that happens a little bit earlier. But let's wait and see for what the RBA says after the July meeting and how the data come out from there.
Well,
a bit more reserved here. Gotta love economics. I could be the chief economist. You just change your punt every single day, depending on sentiment. I guess that's all economics is. It's trying to be as less wrong as possible. It's not a science. Think about how many, you know how you see these big tables, and in a table within like a magazine, I've seen them on the news, and they have all the different economists from the different organisations and how far off the pin they were, and not many are ever very close, and it's only luck that they're close. Think about all the especially during the start of the lockdowns, the COVID period, and all the negative sentiment around property investment, and how, not so much property investment, but home ownership, and the valuation of those properties. And they were saying, there could be a 50% decrease in the next year, up to 60%. The cliff's coming. What happened? Nothing. It went up. So there you go.
The RBA says it's well placed to act in a new era of, I suppose, Trump-sponsored global uncertainty. How will they act, and can they?
The RBA does have room to cut rates if they see things turning out a lot worse than they expected. I think we need to be a little bit realistic about the kinds of shocks that the Australian economy is facing, and the RBA is very well aware of this too. The initial tariff announcements were never going to stick. They were always an ambit claim that Trump was going to negotiate back from. That's how he operates. We are living in a more dangerous and multipolar world from a geopolitical perspective.
So the next thing will be this all that conflict happening with the US and the Middle East over there. I'm not going to get into that. I don't have a view on it. I don't even have much knowledge to talk about that conflict, and I don't really want to. Plenty of other people do. But that's going to be another thing now that's going to cause shambles with the economy and this and that and the other. And we're going to feel all the impacts of that over here now. That'll be the next Ukraine type scenario. You can just see it a mile away.
perspective, but that means, more shocks, but not necessarily global conflagrations. So, people who are looking for a global financial crisis around every corner may find that actually what you see is episodes of volatility.
All right, our gas bills are going up. I'm just flicking around, guys, to get some interesting information from this one. I don't want to hear her cackle on for the next 4 minutes. We got the picture. Basically, the economists stuff, if I know, is the actual answer, and they play around with their models, change the inputs, assumptions, and tweak the answer to try and be as most right as possible on the day, every single day. There you go.
For more than half a century, the sight of a gas stove igniting has been synonymous with dinner time. But it's a changing picture because more and more Australians are getting off gas.
So we're starting to see with households that there is increasing electrification, and some jurisdictions like Victoria or the ACT have even got policies that would ban new connections to the gas network.
Gas pipeline owners recover their investments by spreading the costs across all customers. That customer base is forecast to fall steeply in the years ahead, posing a problem.
Here we go. So gas prices are going to go up through the roof again. So we have to chase this carbon neutral net zero 50 or whatever it is. How about making life cheaper for people? How about that? How about that be the first concern here? But it's not. There's stuff around with the carbon footprint of Australia because we're just a drop. We're just a drop of the pollution that would come out of places like India and China and Thailand and all of that. And I'm reeling off just big countries that do a lot of manufacturing. And I'm going to get someone in the comments, well, actually, India has done this. I'm sure they have a lot more pollution and stuff coming out than Australia. So what I'm saying is our 1% or 0.1% of the global carbon footprint makes no difference. And so we're spending all these billions and hundreds of billions of dollars to bring in all this renewable energy network that's not even going to work. It's not even going to work in full at the moment, according to projections, for the next 20 years. How about focusing on things that are going to make the life for Australian people somewhat easier after all the stuff that everyone's been through the last few years?
For the energy watchdog, which regulates the prices gas pipeline owners can charge.
When we find ourselves with a customer base that might be changing or shifting or shrinking through time, we find that we've got less tools available. And so from that perspective, it makes the job harder.
One of the tools available to regulators is an accounting trick called accelerated depreciation, where companies write down the value of the assets faster and consumers pick up the tab. The thing is, some energy companies are worried about the pace at which it's happening.
We think the transition is behind schedule, and if there's any sort of silver lining in that dark cloud is that perhaps that provides the opportunity to slow down the accelerated depreciation and take some pressure off the consumer bill.
So how's that chart looking then?
Claire Savage insists the...
How's that? Oh, that wasn't set up at all. How's that chart looking, Mr. Office Man? How's that chart looking? Let's try and be smart. How's that chart looking? He's like, oh, what are you talking about? You just told me to sit here. Oh, well, there's a chart?
Regulator must balance the need to maintain that critical infrastructure with the needs of consumers.
When you look at totally what network businesses have asked of us over the last 5 years in terms of accelerated depreciation, it's more than $800 million that they've sought to have accelerated. And what we've approved is really only about half of that, so something like $440 million.
For their part, gas pipeline owners say they're not seeking to pass on all the risks to consumers, but need to recover what is often the huge upfront costs of buying or building gas pipelines.
That's it. There's no it's just like any business, passing all the costs to the consumer. You're paying for their investment, guys. They're not in paying for it. There you go. Gouge the consumer to pay for their shit. All right. Let's have a quick look what else is going on here. Lab-grown meat. Lab-grown meat. I would be eating it.
Food regulator.
What'll be next? Soil and green. Look at that shit. Look at that. Are we living at some sort of dystopian future in reality at the moment? Lab-grown meat now.
In Australia, one of only a handful of countries worldwide to do so. The question for manufacturers is whether lab-made meat passes the taste test with consumers. Nadia Daly visited a factory where the product is made to find out.
Well, it's the ABC, so they're going to say, yeah, it's great. Eat your Soylent Green, guys. Have your Soylent Green.
A candle-lit dinner at what could be an inner-city restaurant. But what this diner is tucking into may surprise you.
As good as always, Kev. Thank you for that.
The meat on the plate wasn't once a live animal. It was grown in a lab.
Far from any farms, we're in a factory in the inner Sydney suburb of Alexandria where tiny meat cells will be grown into real meat that will then be formed into pâtés and other products that will find themselves onto the plates of diners in Singapore and likely soon Australia.
We look at all of the animals out there and we say, what would taste the most delicious? What would be the most nutritious for people?
First cells...
Yeah, just who knows what's in that. Let's just destroy whole industries. That's what they're going to do here. This will probably take off. All the lemmings will start eating this stuff. Crazy world we live in. I know I'm a boomer. Whatever. I don't care. I'm yelling at the clouds. Lab-grown meat does not sit right.
They're extracted from an animal, dead or alive, then they're multiplied in big tanks like this.
And what we do is we put the cells in a nutrient broth that is essentially recreating a lot of the conditions in which cells grow in our body in a way that's very similar to what you'd see in a brewery.
Eventually it forms a sludge-like paste which can then be turned into burgers, pâtés or foie gras.
And we were able to achieve a really delicate, kind of more velvety, silky texture.
Professor Dora Marinova from Curtin University says consumers will want to know how lab-grown meat will affect their health, while businesses are capitalising on environmental concerns.
There is more awareness.
The only reason why businesses do that is to pander to the consumer. Businesses couldn't give two shits about environmental concerns. It's just virtue signalling. Give me a break.
Of the high environmental footprint of the food choices that we have, and red meat has a very, very high associated greenhouse gas emissions. Lab-grown meat or cultured meat, we know that it requires much less land, but there are some questions asked around the use of energy because it's quite an energy-intensive process.
What's, say, the carbon footprint of...
So they make this sludge out of meat cell paste. They put that paste into a steak-shaped mould. And it comes out looking like plastic. Yeah, no, this is a really good idea, guys. Tastes just as good as ever. Get your lab-grown meat, everybody. It's good for the environment. It's green.
Meat grown here versus the same quantity, through conventional farming.
This facility, as it scales, has a lot of potential, even over the next year or so, to be roughly 50% the carbon emissions that the same equivalent amount of chicken to produce.
Aside from sustainability, the other question is around business viability.
I think the biggest issue is cost and scale. This is an expensive product to make. You need special equipment, you need expensive media. I've always said it'll remain a niche product, very different than a piece of steak. It doesn't have that same consistency, it doesn't have the same aroma, but it's an interesting new product.
Professor Paul...
I ain't gonna buy it. I'm not subscribing to it. Call me a cooker if you like. No, thank you. All right, that's enough, guys. I'll leave it there. Thanks for listening to my rants, my inner thoughts today. See you in the next video. Appreciate it.